I know you're probably surprised to see me this soon, but your girl's trying to get on a schedule. And if you are new here, hi. My name is Noah. I am a spiritualist, and on my channel, we talk about death, true crime, spiritual reparations, haunted people, places, and things, and how you can fuck around and find out. If you are not following me, I highly suggest that you do so now and turn your notification bells on, please. So yes, I am trying to get on a schedule where I post Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for you guys. It's a little challenging, I will admit, but I think I've gotten down a schedule. Get my life together, so y'all be patient with me, and I'll be patient with y'all. On today's episode, we will be covering a highly requested topic, and that is the black-eyed children. What are black-eyed children, you ask? Well, no one knows for sure what they are. They have their suspicions, but they are children who show up to your door or to your car and asking to be let in. Usually they will come off as unsuspicious, and you really can't see their eyes until you see their eyes. And most of the time, the eyes are completely black, even the white parts. People think of the black-eyed children as an urban legend, and they can be absolutely skin-crawling and terrifying, especially for the people who have actually come across these little beings. They usually range in age from anywhere from looking between 4 to even teenage. So they come in all different shapes, sizes, and flavors, apparently. They are known to love to hang around woods, highways, residential streets, rural areas. They really don't have a type of place they like to go to. All we know is that they like to knock on your door and convince you to open it and let them in. But if you let them in, you're gonna fuck around and find out. Because while we don't know what these black-eyed children are, we do know that they are bad omens. So usually if you open the door, you experience some kind of bad luck. It could be a divorce, it could be an illness, it could be you dying. It's just a lot of bad, creepy shit starts happening. The black-eyed children almost online are described as some kind of cult of demons or ghosts or something like that. And the only known members of this said ghostly or D-word tribe is Josh and Emily Collins, their brother and sister, and their two friends, Joe and Remy, who all four were said to be killed while playing a game of hide and seek in the woods. And their murders were never solved. They are seen roaming around highways or looking like lost children or even hitchhikers. And they say that they do this to lure people in. Some people argue that they are low vibrational D words. Some say they're ghosts. Some say that they are an alien human hybrid. It's been a lot of speculation as to what these children are. And some say that they are just an internet sensation that has grown over the years. Some people just say it's a bunch of bullshit, but you know me. I'm the spooky spiritualist. I believe a lot of shit that most people don't. So I'm not saying they're not real. I'm not going to dismiss them as internet sensations because people have actually seen these. And the people that have seen these say that it's absolutely terrifying. So when did this whole black-eyed child phenomenon start? The black-eyed children sightings have been going on since the 1980s, way before the internet. They gained recognition and popularity in 1996 because a Texas-based writer started writing about experiences that he had and other people had had with black-eyed children. His name was Brian Bethel. And when he started reporting these phenomenons and all that other stuff, people started to literally send him stories about the same type of experience in different parts of the country. It gained so much popularity that in 2012, Brian Bethel was featured on a TV show, and it's called Monsters and Mysteries in America. Then in 2013, MSN on its segment The Weekly Strange also covered the black-eyed children. Now, why would such a big news source put that in there if there wasn't some truth to it? I don't know. It is the Weekly Strange, which I'm assuming was a segment where it was just a bunch of like creepy shit that MSN would feature. Either way, the sightings never stop. They still go on today, which leads me to think that there is something out there because people literally are terrified whenever they see these kids. They have this sense of dread, especially if you let them in, if you open the door when they come. I'm going to be reading 3 encounters from a website. I will be linking it in my description about people coming into contact with these black-eyed children. In January 2016, a woman in Vermont made the tragic mistake of letting 2 black-eyed children in her home. A blizzard was raging outside when she heard a faint knocking on her front door. A boy and a girl stood there shivering, begging to use her phone. Unnerved by their presence, the woman nevertheless let them in and went to retrieve her phone. After the children walked into the light of the family room, the woman realized their eyes were completely black. As she stared at them in horror, her husband's nose began to bleed. At the same time, the power suddenly went out. After what felt like an eternity, the children spoke in unison, saying that their parents had arrived. The woman watched as the 2 quietly left her house and entered a nondescript black car with a man in a suit. Not long after the strange encounter, the woman's husband was diagnosed with a severe skin cancer. The woman began to suffer from regular nosebleeds and an onslaught of other medical issues. She's convinced her failing health, along with her husband's, is the result of the black-eyed children she unwittingly let into their home. See, this is what I'm talking about. Sneaky little assholes, because they will literally get at your door and pull at your heartstrings to let them in. Don't go for it. In 2010, a man known as Nodik encountered 2 black-eyed teenagers outside of his place of work. It was an ordinary July night in Ohio, and Nodik was in the middle of the night shift. Craving a cigarette, Nodik stepped outside the building and noticed 2 teenage boys across the street. As he smoked, he realized the boys were staring at him. Weary, Nodik returned to the safety of his cubicle and tried to refocus on his work, only to see through the security cameras that the boys had appeared in front of his building, motioning for him to come outside. Fed up, Nodik went to the door, contemplating if he should call the police or not. As if they had read his minds, the boys insisted that such action was unnecessary. All they needed to do was use a phone. Nodik refused. He watched in horror as one of the boys continued to stare at the security camera while the other ventured to the back of the building, watching the cameras as though they could see what Nodik was doing. With frayed nerves, Nodik contacted the police, watching the teenagers on the video feed the entire time. When the officers arrived on scene, he could not locate the teenagers anywhere, despite the fact that Nodik never tore his eyes away from the video feed. That's another thing a lot of people say about black-eyed children is that they can like read your mind. They will say things that you are thinking. Like, for instance, Nodik. He was thinking, I'm going to call the police, and they said out loud, don't call the police, just come outside, we ain't going to jump you. On March 17, 2008, a 12-year-old boy had a bone-chilling experience in an outlet parking lot. While waiting in his mother's truck for his mom to finish getting a haircut, he saw a boy walking across the parking lot. Thinking it was a friend from school, the boy banged on the window until the other boy turned. Realizing it was not his friend, the boy in the truck watched in confusion as the strange kid walked up and stared through the window. The boy caught one glance at the other boy's solid black eyes and knew he was staring into the face of evil. You must let me in, the black-eyed boy demanded. Panicked, the boy in the car crouched underneath the glove compartment. After several minutes, the black-eyed boy finally disappeared. When the boy's mother returned to the truck, she informed her son that that black-eyed child had come into the salon, demanding the keys to her vehicle. Thankfully, the boy's mother did not give in. Not only are they demanding, they're just downright rude. But these entities are said to tug at people's heartstrings. They tug at your heartstrings until you give them what they want, which is access into your home, access into your face. Because there are times whenever people don't let them in, but they do open that door and it's just as bad as up. So I won't be answering the door for anyone that looks anywhere between the ages of 5 and 16. I wish. I have kids in those age ranges, so I have to, God damn it. As always, we're going to go over to TikTok University and look at some videos of people who have encountered these beings, know about these beings, and can teach us a few things, like how not to fuck around and find out. All the creators and the website I was just reading from will be tagged down in the description. This first creator goes by the handle of Please Leave Pod. She is a podcaster. I'm going to try to find her stuff on here and link it, but she tells about how these black-eyed children originated in a certain area. Again, the story gets recycled, but she has some tea and receipts. Just watch.
Did you know that the legend of the black-eyed children started after multiple people reported seeing little girls with completely black eyes in Cannock Chase, which is the area where serial unaliver Raymond Morris abducted several of his victims? An 18-year-old woman made the first report in 1982 when she was hanging out in Cannock Chase with some friends, partying and having a good time, when she said she heard a little girl screaming for help. She said she saw a little girl around 6 to 8 years old running toward the woods screaming, "Help, mommy, help." She chased after her but eventually lost her as she got to the woods. The police were called, but they never found the little girl. When Raymond Morris passed away in 2014, there was a rash of sighting of black-eyed girls in the area. One man reported, "On Saturday the 13th of September, my wife and I were walking through Cannock Chase with our dog. Once we had entered the woodland and the road was no longer visible, we started to hear the giggling noise of a little girl. To our amazement, a child no taller than 1 meter in height appeared as if out of nowhere further up the path in front of us. We stopped dead in our tracks after noticing her eyes had no color. Her head was tilted to the side in much the same way it would appear if she had been hung. She stared at us for a few minutes before running away into a densely grouped area of trees. My wife wanted to follow her, but I was having none of it." Another woman recalled, "Around 2 months ago, my daughter and I were walking through the area when we heard the screams of a young child. I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl, but they definitely seemed in distress and sounded very close to us, so we instantly started running toward the noise. We couldn't find the child anywhere, and so stopped to catch our breath. That's when I turned around and saw a girl stood behind me, no more than 10 years old, with her hands over her eyes like she was waiting for a birthday cake. I asked her if she was okay, and if she had been the one screaming. Then she put her arms down by her side and opened her eyes, which is when I saw they were completely black, no iris, no white, nothing. I jumped back and grabbed my daughter, and when I looked again, the child was gone. It was strange, really. I knew something was going to happen even before it did. I just had a weird feeling." And yet another mother was looking through the photos of her children in Cannock Chase in 2014 when she spotted the, quote, ghostly figure of a child in a Victorian dress standing to the left of a tree where her children were climbing. "We were on a family walk one afternoon and the kids decided to climb a tree. I stopped to take a photo, but it wasn't until I got home that I spotted a child's face looking back at me." Plenty of other people claim to have caught footage or photos of what they all say are little girls under the age of 10 with completely black eyes. So what do you think? Are these the victims of Raymond Morris doomed to haunt these woods forever?
Everybody's not lying. They're seeing the same type of entities, but you be the judge. This next creator's name is Shea Arisha, and she is recalling a time that she was at home alone and got a knock on the door.
If you see black-eyed children, don't let them in.
When I encountered black-eyed children, I did not let them in. Didn't make any noise, didn't open the door, nothing. But they still knew that I was there. The story starts in this creepy ass North Texas house. I've spoken briefly about this house before. I even uploaded a video to YouTube about some of the things that I experienced here, but I've never shown it, and I do feel like it helps to have this visual while I tell the story. Quick side note, I have no fucking idea what this is. I'm gonna take y'all back to 2011 right quick. I was always the first one who made it home from school. My mom told me, get your ass in the house, shut the door, lock the door, don't open the door for nobody, period. So I'm in the back of the house and I'm watching TV, and I had to have been there for a couple hours, right? So this happened early evening at the latest. So I'm at the back of the house watching TV, listening to music, whatever, and I hear a faint knock. So So I pause the TV and I get up to go and see who's at the door. I was not supposed to open it, but I was just curious as to who it was. So I'm walking through the dining area and I stand at the doorway to the living room, which is a little bit behind this window right here. And I'm standing there a little bit confused because I'm like, who is knocking at the door? Now, while I'm standing there, I hear another knock. So I decide I'm going to tiptoe to the door and peep through the peephole and see who it is. So I tiptoe to the door, but before I can say anything or look through the peephole or anything, I hear, "Can I come in?" Real quick before I get into that, the first thing that I noticed when I walked up to this door was the energy. If you're familiar with the paranormal, you've heard the term impending sense of doom or impending sense of dread, right? That is the perfect way to explain what the hell I felt standing on the other side of this door. Just this dark, heavy, ominous cloud of dark energy. So I get up on my tippy toes and I look through the peephole. And when I look through the peephole, I see two children. One blonde-haired girl standing about here and one boy with short black hair standing about here. The girl was either looking straight ahead or looking down, but all I remember is that I could not see her eyes. However, the boy with the bowl cut, he was looking directly into the peephole. I don't even know how he knew I was at the door, let alone looking through the peephole, but we were basically making eye contact. This is obviously when I noticed the eyes, right? But while we're making eye contact, this boy says to me again, "Can I come in?" And I'm still thinking to myself, like, there's no way they can possibly know that I'm inside. So I just lower myself back down to the floor and I tiptoe over to this window. Now I'm looking through this window at an angle so I can see the boy and the girl standing in front of the door. And while I'm at this window, that is when I see them turn around and walk down the stairs. There was nothing old and unfamiliar about their clothing. Nothing stood out to me about them at all aside from their eyes. The only thing that's a little bit odd to me about this is that it happened while it basically looked like this outside. So it appears that black-eyed children can roam in the daylight as well.
I'm so glad that she followed her mama's instructions because, you know, mama would leave us at home and say, "You better not open this door for nobody, no one." And in this particular case, I'm so glad she listened. The next creator is Creepy Storytime, and she recalls a time that she encountered one of these black-eyed children. And just listen.
Story time of the time that I encountered a black-eyed child. If this is the type of content that you're into, feel free to follow along. I post a scary story every single day. And for reference, I did share the story a while back when I had like 2 followers. I figured I would go ahead and reshare it now. This happened when I lived in Georgia. It was late at night. I was up watching a movie when I heard somebody knocking on my door. For whatever reason, my gut instinct told me not to open it. 1, it's creepy for anyone to be coming to my door so late at night. But 2, I just had this gut-wrenching feeling that something was off. I ended up getting up from the couch and I got near the door trying to figure out who was out there. And before I could even open my mouth, the person standing behind the door knew I was standing there and said, "Hi ma'am, I'm just here selling some magazine subscriptions. Can you please let me in?" I was a bit startled at first because how would he even know that I was standing there? I was definitely quiet. So I kind of peeked through the peephole and I saw that it was like a boy about to be maybe 12, 13 years old. He was wearing a hoodie. He was just kind of standing there. I decided to ignore him. He continued to knock on my door and start saying, "Please ma'am, if you would just let me borrow a corner of your table so we can talk about these magazine subscriptions." And I'm just like, no. And he's just knocking and knocking and knocking until he gives up. He turns around and he goes right across where my neighbor lives. I hear when he knocks on her door and she opens it. The minute she opens the door, I hear the boy say whatever it was he was gonna say to her, and all I hear is her scream, say "honey," like calling to like her husband, and then she just slams the door shut. Right after that, it was complete silent. I didn't hear anything else. The next morning at like 7 a.m., my neighbor came knocking on my door. I looked out and I saw that it was her, so I opened it and she was freaked out. And she begins to ask me if a boy had been at my door the night before. So I explained to her and I said, "Yes, somebody knocked on my door and I saw when he knocked on your door." She then goes to tell me that when she opened the door and he started to talk to her, she saw that his eyes were completely blacked out. Like even the white parts were completely blacked out, and she got this gut-wrenching feeling that her first instinct was to yell for her husband, and she slammed the door shut. That was one of the first times that I had ever even heard about the black-eyed kids. And once I did more research, I found out what happens if you open the door. So black-eyed kids bring death. They bring chaos. They bring sickness. They bring loss of money, loss of income, loss of job. They just bring the worst of the worst. Thankfully, she did not allow him into the house, but she did answer the door. So unfortunately, it cost her marriage. Like, her and her husband ended up breaking up. It was a horrible divorce. She lost everything. Like, everything just horrible. So word of advice, if you ever hear a knock at the door, don't answer it.
That's what I be saying about them ruining your damn life, making things that are not in your favor happen. Trying the magazine subscriptions. What year are we in? Somebody needs to update the black-eyed children. That no one, some people do, but most of us are on the internet reading from the website. We don't do magazine subscriptions like we used to. The next TikTok comes from an account that's called Real Ghost Hunter 1, and he's explaining the whole phenomenon, where did it start, and all those good things. Remember, we talked about Brian Bethel, so this explains it a little bit better.
You've all heard the term black-eyed kids, but do you know where it came from? Dates back to 1996, when this story came out, the very first one that announced them to the world. A journalist named Brian Bethel was in a dimly lit parking lot between the hours of 9 and 10 p.m. Parked in front of an office next door to a movie theater. He sat in his car filling out the check to pay his internet bill. The only light he could use was from the marquee of the movie theater. He intended to drop off his check at the office as soon as he was done. He was so engrossed in writing out the check he didn't notice two boys walk up to his car, until he heard two knocks on his window. One boy was approximately 9 years old, the other was about 12. One had an olive complexion and dark brown hair. The other was pale, had red hair and freckles. They were both wearing pullover hoodies that made it hard to see their eyes. Brian didn't roll down the window, but he could hear the older boy clearly. The boy said, "We're here to see the movie Mortal Kombat, but we left our money at home. Will you give us a ride home?" Brian claimed later that at that moment he had overwhelming fear, but he didn't know why. The boys seemed harmless, and the request seemed innocent enough. But it seemed weird that two boys would come up to a perfect stranger to ask for a ride home. And he couldn't figure out why he had such fear. Brian glanced up at the marquee of the movie theater and noticed that Mortal Kombat had been playing for over an hour already. He knew something was off. The older boy said, "It won't take long. We're just two boys. We won't hurt you. We don't have a gun." The boy's tone was jarring. He sounded like a young boy, but his manner of speaking was odd and had an unnatural rhythm. Thoughts were racing through Brian's mind. Why would these words even come out of a boy's mouth? And how did they know Brian was afraid of them? And who on earth would be afraid of two boys? An almost uncontrollable urge came over Brian to let the boys in the car, but the terror he felt in his gut stopped him. Suddenly the boys looked up and made eye contact with Brian, whom would never be the same again. For the first time, Brian got a clear look at their eyes. They were completely black, without pupils. Only darkness. Terror filled his whole body as the older kid got upset as he made excuses why he couldn't let them in. He threw the car in reverse and tore out of there. The next day, all he could think about was how the kids lied to him about the movie. And what was their reason for approaching him? What did they really want, and what would have happened if he would have actually let them in his car?
Like I said, everybody's not lying. If everyone is saying the sky is purple and you look up and it appears a little purple, then it's probably purple. Moral of the story is always look out your people before you open the door. And if you can't see a face, no case. And definitely don't let them things in your house. That is all for today, YouTube. If you would like me to share a spooky story, a fuck around and find out story, true crime story, whatever, please send it to my email, or you can reply on here. I do read a lot of the comments. Sometimes it does get overwhelming, but I go through as many as I can. I will be pinning my email to this video and leaving it in the description of the video as well. Until next time, y'all do good, be good, and stay safe.